Welcome to the Thinking Practitioner Podcast,
a podcast where we dig into the fascinating issues, conditions, and quandaries in the massage and manual therapy world today.
I'm Whitney Lowe.
And I'm Till Luca.
Welcome to the Thinking Practitioner. Welcome to the Thinking Practitioner, where Books of Discovery has been a part of massage therapy education for over 20 years. Thousands of schools around the world teach with their textbooks, e-textbooks, and digital resources. Books of Discovery likes to say learning adventures start here, and they see that same spirit here on the Thinking Practitioner podcast, and are proud to sponsor our work, knowing we share the mission to bring the massage and bodywork community enlivening content that advances our profession. So be sure to check out their collection of e-textbooks and digital learning resources for pathology, kinesiology, anatomy, and physiology at booksofdiscovery.com, where you, the Thinking Practitioner listeners, can save 15% by entering THINKING at checkout. Thanks again.
And this is Till, and I am our in-house sponsor for this episode. I'm going to try to read this in the first person. It's written in the third person. You'll see what I mean. So I am the sponsor, and my group offers all kinds of learning opportunities, from 1-hour certificate courses to ongoing study groups. I want to highlight a live online course that we have coming up soon, our next training in the Principles of Advanced Myofascial Techniques series. We've been evolving as a group, me and the faculty have been evolving this series for the 3 years that we've been pushed online. And we've actually been online teaching the courses like Whitney for a couple of decades now. So this latest version of how we're working it, I think, is really hitting the mark, hitting the perfect balance between learning at your own pace, getting personalized real-time interaction and support. And when you sign up, you get lifetime access to all the recordings. They've been fully updated. It was a really fun project to go through and take some of the things we've been teaching for years and bring them into the modern era. Plus, you get a variety of choices for scheduling some live meetings with us as faculty as well. Super affordable with discounts for ABMP members, AT subscribers, in-person course repeaters, and lots of other discounts. Check it out in the show notes or on my site, advanced-trainings.com. All right, that wasn't so bad. I got to say, I'm still getting used to this idea of reading my own sponsor spot, but that was
Maybe
right.
I should read your sponsor spot for you.
I wonder maybe next time.
Hey, Till is such a great guy. Here's what he's doing here now.
There you go. Thank you. How are you doing, Whitney?
Doing very well. And yourself today? It's a little crazy on the schedule of things that are going on, but that's kind of par for the course usual. But today, actually, I'm quite excited. We have two guests with us today, not just one, but two.
Two guests. We have Drew Freedman from the Boston Bodyworker. Welcome, Drew.
Hey, everyone. How you guys doing?
And we have Diane Matkowski from the Massage Mentor Institute. How you doing, Diane?
Hello.
Hello. Good to have you here. So good to have you here. Good to be here with all of you. And
they are return guests, so they would like to decided that we were at least decent enough to have them come back again. So we didn't get blacklist from them. So thank you all for being here.
Do you think that's like an ethically required disclaimer that we're recycling guests when we do that? These guys are so such a depth of experience and knowledge and perspective, though, that I think we could just make a whole show about them. Yeah, so I'm really glad to have both of you back. And
I don't know about that, but
yeah. This came out of a conversation you and I were having, Drew, where you you put a message up, hey, I'm looking to hire some folks in your clinic there. And we just started talking, and what you were saying about the challenges you're having finding therapists really struck a chord, and realized it's very topical, and probably a lot of people dealing with the scenario you're facing from both sides of that equation, from as employers like you are, and as therapists like I know all of us are as well. And I really wanted today to focus on the employer side of that question. I know there's a lot of different sides to it and a lot of interesting wrinkles in this question, but I really wanted a chance to hear from you two as leaders in our field and as entrepreneurs and as employers, like what this is like right now to be running in a massage business and trying to hire people. What do you think? You said yes to my invitation. You still in?
I think so. I hope so. I'm not going to
Absolutely.
bail now. We don't run now. We got to do this, right?
Yeah, there's really nowhere to go.
It's quite frankly, it's too important not to talk about. It's just, it's obviously, as you saw just from your simple post that you put out yesterday, asking the question, it struck a nerve on quite a few people. And, it's interesting the people who actually didn't comment on there because they're already so upset. So I think we have a good topic of discussion for today.
Yeah, you're referring to a couple of Facebook questions. I just put the question out there. Hey, what would it take, therapists, for you to answer an ad an employer put out and work for an employer? And I just wanted to get a sense of what you guys are up against, really. And it gave us a good sense because we got a lot of replies all across the spectrum, some heated, some appreciative.
Yeah.
And I can, as later on when we get to more details, I want to share some of the summaries of that, what we heard. But no, that's, and maybe in the show notes, we'll put a link directly to some of those posts so people can go read them themselves if they want to.
I did my best to kind of filter through and read as many of them as I, excuse me, as I could. And, you see some people who are just offended by the fact that they would ever think about working for somebody, whereas other people, they're crushed that they can't work for somebody and they have to do all the other legwork in terms of running their business. So you can see from both sides of it, it's tough.
It is tough. Drew, before we get to Diane, anything you want the audience to know about you and what you do in the world, that kind of thing?
Yeah, I mean, just as a background, I've been doing this since 95, 96. I was an athletic trainer, and then I rolled into massage therapy doing that, and opened Boston Body Worker in 99, and we've been running ever since then. And it's been a challenge, like it's always been for most employers in the massage world, but having a practice in the heart of Copley Square in Boston, obviously overhead's a little bit different than it might be in middle America somewhere. There's other issues that you have to come up against, but we've been doing it for 23 years now. And I have therapists that have been with me for 12 years. I have 10 years, 7 years, 8 years, and 3 months. So it's not a question on our end sometimes of, what kind of an employer am I? Do people want to work for me? Some yes, some no, of course. But it always comes down to the individual practitioner, I think, and what they're willing to put into their work and what they're willing to work for and those sort of things. But I think from my background, I've probably hired and seen people go, I don't want to say fired, but over 300-400 employees over the last, 23 years or so. And it's grueling. It is grueling to have some of these conversations with them. Because you feel for them as a therapist. Diane and I are also therapists too, obviously. So we understand the work that's put into doing a massage or doing 7 to 10 in a day. So we have an appreciation for that side of it, where I think a lot of employers may not understand why they say we need more time in between appointments or we need to make X. Like, we get it, but a lot of them don't have the other side of the equation, whereas we have to manage 7 to 20 different employees with their own personal schedules and stuff. And there's a lot of juggling that goes back and forth. And you got to toggle that, as Diane knows, toggle that between, am I a massage therapist or am I their boss? Or am I their friend? Am I their boss? Like, it goes back and forth. So it's a delicate dance,
So the challenges of running a massage enterprise, a massage business, and how you have worked with that over the years from your identity as a therapist and a business owner, and how the connection with the massage therapist is so important. And yet you're not finding enough people to hire. That's interesting.
Diane, I'll let you jump in there, but I think we'll go into deeper in terms of what COVID did to all that, and how that impacted any momentum that we might have even had pre-COVID, because we did have some good momentum. I think we'll get into that, but I won't overspeak and let Diane jump in.
Diane, tell us what you'd like people to know about you and how you see all this.
Hello, my name's Diane. I'm the owner of Freedom Massage in Malvern. I've been in business for myself since 1996. I have 11 therapists.
Dan, can you tell us where Malvern is?
Malvern is outside the Philadelphia area.
Okay, thank you.
So I'm pretty close to Philly.
Familiar. Yeah.
We are hiring. Anyone listening, we are hiring. And
put your contact information in the show notes.
By the way, we are hiring.
We're hiring too.
So I have a staff of 11 therapists. I have an amazing manager who now runs the business for me. Her name's Eugenia. I do offer PTO. I do offer a 401k plan.
Paid
I do
time
offer
off.
continuing.
401k is like
Yep.
retirement. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yep. Continuing education, flexibility and schedule. And we do have the value of family first and the therapist body first. So for me, after being a therapist for so long, it was important to me. One of my passions is the massage business used to be owned by massage therapists. And it was a different time. It was a peaceful time. And so for me, I feel like just being like Drew was saying, we were massage therapists. We are massage therapists. So I really try to cater to the needs of the employee and the client. So for me, reading some of the stuff, I was like, I understand everything that everyone's saying on both sides.
You're talking about reading the
But I
comments in the Facebook
Some of the
post.
comments.
Yeah, on
Yeah.
Facebook. But I hope that, people will realize that there are businesses, small businesses out there, some run by massage therapists who really love massage therapists and want them to do better. I want my staff to do better than I ever did.
Absolutely.
That's my goal. I want them to do
100%.
better in every way. I want them to be better body workers. I want them to make more money than I did. So I just think there is that out there too. Maybe we're just harder to find.
Mhm.
So the
Yeah.
issue as I'm clarifying it is, you two have both tried really hard to offer the ideal place to work. And as I understand it, you don't have enough people working for you. Is it that simple?
It's
Yeah, it's kind of that simple in a sense. I mean, the demand is there, the supply is not. I mean, we literally turn down 20 to 30 clients a week, and because we don't have enough staffing.
Huh.
It's not a matter of my therapist won't work; they won't do enough massages. It's just that we just can't hire enough therapists to fill in the holes. We have enough room. We have smaller space than we used to have. It's just we can't find therapists. And then the other, and this is going to be a touchy subject, so I'll get right into it from the very beginning of it, is a majority of the phone calls that we get for requests for appointments are for female therapists. So as an employer looking to hire, when I put job postings out there, 90% of the people that respond are male therapists. I'm a male therapist. I understand how it's hard for us to do work, but I always it is what it is. I mean, it's the one profession where I always say that men are discriminated against. So get over it, guys. Just work harder. But when you're looking to satisfy the demand, how do you specifically go out there and look for what's being demanded? You can't say, or some people will say that you can't say, looking for female therapists, looking for male therapists only. That's a tough one. And I completely understand the back on that, but it just, how do you go around that? And how do you not respond to male therapists who are genuinely out there looking for work? How do you screen other therapists that just because they're of the gender that you're looking to hire, they are more qualified immediately than the other gender? That's not how it works, right? As far as last I checked. It's a sensitive, slippery slope. And then it's experience. They're like, I've been working as a massage therapist for 6 years now. Okay, that's decent experience for 6 years, right? Well, but the last 3 you were in COVID, so you didn't touch anybody. So you've been working for 3 years, and the 3 years prior to COVID, you just got out of school and you barely did more than 3 massages a week. So 6 years experience is really not legit. You see what I mean? So where somebody else might have just got out of school, pre-COVID and was working right away and started doing all their massages. Next thing you know, they have nobody to work on for 3 years and they lost their momentum. So you're just trying to find that right fit, and it's daunting. It's daunting.
I'm a little curious about the timing here of this. Did you see these kinds of problems happening like in the last few years, or is this predominantly a post-COVID phenomenon that you're seeing?
Yeah, go ahead, Diane.
No, after you, Drew. Go ahead.
Well, what I was going to say is that I think I've always had issues with hiring. And I think part of it has to do with the way my business is put out there. Whitney, you and I've talked over the years, we call it clinical massage versus orthopedic massage or deep. We've always said clinical massage that encompasses all the different techniques. But I think the way we've classified our site, our business, and the therapists that work for us, that a lot of therapists coming out of school feel intimidated to work for us. They're not capable of working at that level just yet, so they want more experience. And that's entirely not true. they're completely capable. They just need some coaching or whatever in terms of how we develop our treatment strategies in terms of at Boston Body Worker. But I think sometimes they feel like they can't aspire to work there yet because they need more experience. And if they're never getting that experience, they're never really aspiring to get to work at our level here.
Mhm.
And I've had therapists. I mean, Whitney, Solange, she's been with me since 2012. Okay. I hired her out of Bancroft because she just would not stop emailing me. She would not leave me alone. She wanted a job. And I was like, at the time I had a minimum 2 years experience out of school, and she just would not let it go. And here she is 12 years later, still on my team. And it's just, the therapists are out there. The persistency, I don't think, is necessarily always there.
Mhm.
So I don't know what's driving them or what's not driving them, but I think that's what we've always seen.
It's a endemic issue across the board, across, not just in the US, it's across professions, it's across countries where it's hard to find enough people to fill the jobs that are available. I just saw this yesterday in the New York Times, so I thought I should mention it. Desperate for workers, Britain expands childcare as an incentive. The British government ramped up its efforts to get more people into work and make Britain an enticing investment destination as it announced Wednesday an expansion of free childcare, extended housing, energy subsidies, and bolstered business investment incentives. And the next story next to it was more Britons decide to leave the workforce. Yeah, so right next to that, it's like the British government is ramping up its efforts to draw people into the workforce, and at the same time, even more people saying, "Yeah, I'm not going to do this."
And they're ramping down the work week around here too, right? There's a whole petition for a 4-hour work week now versus the 4-day work week versus 5-day work week.
Mm-hmm.
So everybody wants to work less and make more. It's the American dream, right? Come on.
Where does that leave you guys? Please go, Diane.
I just want to chime in a little and just say that in the beginning of my career as a business owner, I had a wait list to get in for a job. I had no shortage of therapists. And I want to say that I started to notice this trend pre-pandemic, dare I say. I really did. I started to notice that it was a little harder to get in. I used to always be invited to schools to talk. As a small business owner, I was a wanted commodity as a small business owner, locally owned massage person. And more as time went by, the invitations from the schools got a little lessened, or the buzz around my business diffused a little, I think, because of the widespread of all these massage places going up everywhere. So the business really blew up. It more than doubled in size. And I think, and also the mindset of massage therapists is shifted a little. I think that has something to do with it too. And it's not bad or good or anything. It's just different. So as an employer, I feel like I've really had to adapt to some of those changes, that mindset of the people coming out. And I've had to change the way that I go about finding people. And also maybe what I thought was a great find in a massage therapist before is a little different now too. So for me, it's kind of been a slow shift. It's been a slow shift.
What is that change in the mindset that you're describing? How would you describe it?
As far as what I look for?
The change you've seen in massage therapists over the time that you've had to adapt
I feel like maybe I'm just a kumbaya old 1996 massage therapist kind. I don't know. But it used to be a really community-based kind of thing where we all kind of worked together more, I felt like. I worked with a group when I first got out of massage school, and I loved it. And then I worked by myself for about 3 years, and I just looked out my window looking for the next massage client. And I found that I didn't have anyone to run questions by. I didn't have anyone to challenge me and push me.
Isolation,
and I was terribly lonely. So that is why, in all honesty, it wasn't, I didn't want to become a millionaire. I started my massage business because working by myself was unchallenging, lonely, and I really just didn't like it. So I really liked when I was introduced to massage, how it was a community affair. Like back in the Esalen days, it was like the Woodstock of massage. It might not be the professional that we look at now, So some of that for me is the shift where there's a lot more solo practitioners. AMTA just came out with a report that 70% of massage people are, call themselves sole proprietors, which again is great. It's cool, but there's also a lot of benefits behind being an employee, and not every person is built to have their own practice. And I think people try to do that and then give up.
And my impression is
Because they
that
think
like
that's what they
3 to 4 years ago, that number was fewer. I think it was 60-40 at some point. I might be remembering that wrong, but my impression is that it shifted toward more solo, fewer employees.
Do you think, based upon what I've drifted away from social media quite a bit over the last 3 or 4 years.
Congratulations.
But a lot of the threads that I was following, especially in the Facebook groups, the massage therapist groups, a lot of infighting was going on there. Lots and lots. And I don't know if that still happens as much because, again, I don't follow like some of these different groups, but it was getting very disheartening seeing the way therapists talk to other therapists and they treated each other. And I think that maybe that's a push towards being that sole proprietor, being like, you know what? I am my own island. I will work alone. But like Diane said, if you do it long enough and hard enough, that isolationism you feel, it's a social trap for yourself too, because you're not being challenged. You don't have anybody to bounce different thoughts off of in terms of treatment strategies. Yeah. I consider myself fortunate to have people like yourselves at the other end of a computer that I could just text and ask questions to whenever I want to. And quite frankly, anybody who's out there listening, you can always text me or any of them. I'll speak for them because we love to help other therapists. And I think more therapists out there need to start recognizing that what you see on these social threads and these groups, the infighting that happens, there's a lot of angry therapists and upset therapists out there, and that's where they tend to voice themselves. And like a lot of people said some pretty mean shit to me in the last 2 weeks when I put out some job postings, and I just pulled out my best Laura Allen hat and just said, bless your heart, and just moved on. Like, I don't want to get triggered by any of them because they're upset for their own reasons. But I think a lot of the infighting we see might be reflective of the sole proprietor numbers we see from the AMTA.
Maybe a connection there. Yeah.
I wonder too, is that, with a lot of the things that we're seeing being written about broad trends across the social landscape here in this country and maybe even somewhat worldwide as well right now, just because of the extreme, polarization in our society that we have, like just this maybe this isn't something that's really unique to the massage profession, that's just culture wide, that there, a lot of it's hard to get along with people now. It seems like in many
I think
respects.
you're 100% right. We are. I mean, this is all. I think. Listen, we all live in our own little bubbles, right? Everybody lives in their bubbles, and everybody thinks everybody else's bubbles all messed up. But you don't have to look far to see the biases that are around us, and to immediately be impacted by them when you go on socially. And just having some awareness of that and some respect for other people's perspectives, and just say, hey, I never considered that. I was frustrated 10 years ago, and it's different than now. Yeah.
Can I just say too, and this is just a consideration. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I don't really know what is right or wrong. But like I said, my whole thing for years has been the massage business used to be run by massage therapists. Now, the person who owns the most massage chains in the country, they own 75 establishments. They are an equity-based company that just kind of buys companies. So they're running 75, massage studios. So to me, that's interesting. So when you get the government involved and you get big business involved, it's going to shift the energy of things. I hate to say that. I think there's a good place for it. I think some of it's awesome. So many more people are getting massage. I could jump out of my skin with happy. Like people that never got massage, never heard of massage, thank God they're getting some kind of massage, and hopefully they'll find the right fit. So thank God it's blown up like it has. But again, I just wonder if it's something so delicate, something so intimate, something so sacred to touch another person that I just don't know if it should be taken lightly. It's that sacredness. I wish it would come back and get contained and scooped up. And for me, that's the sad part after being in the business all these years, is kind of watching that become secondary or sometimes even non-existent in our conversations or our work, like the whole vibe of the whole thing, I guess you could say. So
So I've seen like when I was in Copley for 22 years, I guess I was there, and a Massage Envy opened up maybe it was probably 2014, 2013. It opened up right around the corner from us, and everyone's like, "Oh my God, what are you going to do? Massage Envy is going to crush you." I was ecstatic that they opened up around the corner from us because they started putting up billboards and signs, and there was people in the state government lobbying for massage therapy. So they created a low barrier entry point for massage to become more mainstream, which was a good thing I felt for my business. And a lot of people flocked to my business once they learned we had a membership program before Massage Envy was doing membership programs, and they just kind of eased into it. So they kind of created and trained our consumer for our practice, which was good. But they also created this model that says if you're going to work for somebody that has a membership-based business, you're going to get $15 to $22 an hour, and that's what you're getting. No time in between appointments. Only going to do 50 minutes, not 60 minutes. Like, no, it's not that way. I mean, some obviously chains are like that, but we still run 60-minute massages. I put 15 to 30-minute buffers in between all my appointments. I make sure that my therapists have snacks on site, and if somebody's running out to get food for them if they need something, like these guys are working their ass. We did it, Diane. We know what it feels like to have like 4 minutes because the next client's waiting out there for you, and you have no time to like eat a power bar. Like, but if somebody could change your sheets for you while you eat that power bar, that makes the difference in the world.
That's right, Drew. Preach it.
Yes,
True.
But I guess my point is that I want the massage therapists out there to know, like, if you want to work someplace, pick up the phone, call them, ask to talk to the owner, ask to talk to the hiring manager, say, tell me about this position. Don't feel like they need you there. Like, be empathetic both ways and communicate with them. And that, I mean, I'm telling you, you're going to talk to somebody like me and Diane that would love to have you if you're willing to work as hard as we work. Because I promise you probably never will, but I'd love to see you try.
I have to jump in on one of those little things. One of those little things that you don't think of. I see you, Till. Hi, Till. Is just having someone help you change your sheets. Like when you're back to back, 1 hour massage after 1 hour massage, you're kind of getting to the point where you're like, you're not sure what foot's what. No matter how brilliant or strong or crafty you are, when you're seeing a lot of clients, it's like a high pace. And when you have another staff member help you change the sheets, my God, that's like a dream come true.
We had in Copley, we had 7 treatment rooms in Copley, okay, and we would be going all the time with them, right? And my therapists were working. I would make it a habit about every 15 minutes to get up from my desk and walk down the hallways when I saw clients coming out, because I knew the next one's waiting, and I just grab their sheets. How's everything going? You doing okay? Good, great. And I throw their stuff in the laundry. That saves them an extra 30 seconds from having to bring the laundry to the laundry room and to come back to change the sheets. Now they're just there changing, and they're right on to the next one. And I don't remember whether they said thank you or not, they probably did, but it's just appreciated because you're part of a team, and that's how the team works together. Like it's not a one-to-one thing like Diane was saying before. You get to work with a group of people, and everybody's in it for the same reasons, to make sure that the customer feels better, right? And you want to be respected in your work environment. I don't know, it's not rocket science, right?
You guys have been doing this game for a while, and you've learned what helps, what your therapists want, what the customers want. I got to say, what you're saying is validated by what I saw coming back in the Facebook strings too, because what I was after was what makes a difference to therapists, so we could bring it into this conversation. And one of the things that was mentioned, let me put it this way. It wasn't just, should I work for an employer or should I work for ourselves? That was a pretty clear divide, but it wasn't just that divide.
Right.
Of the people that were into working for an employer, the divide was, should I work for a low-paying employer or should I work for a high-paying employer? Should I work often for a chain or should I work for an independent shop? Was the divide there too. And there were lots of people coming in defending working for an independent shop. What's interesting is I got a lot more private messages about that than I did about anything else. Those people weren't posting. I don't know what that's about. I don't know what that's about.
I saw that too.
People are more private about the fact they're happy with where they're working than they were about their complaints. Yeah. But when I dialed it down to get specific, like, what are you happy with? I mean, changing the sheet sounds like a little thing, but one of the things that was a theme that came out was competent support from the staff. A lot of people mentioned scheduling. A lot of people mentioned like dealing with client issues, support around that. A lot of people mentioned just the competence of the staff in the place that they were working as being a major factor of why they liked working for an employer. So, I mean, you're naming some of the high points.
One of my favorite things after all these years is dealing with clients that are quote unquote difficult. And that is because I've been doing it for 25 years. And so I've learned how to kind of dance with it, almost enjoy it, because I believe that inside everyone, there's something good and I can find it and we can work out something so the client's happy. But a massage therapist who's fairly new and has seen 3 clients and still has one more, pick up the phone and have to deal with something like that, sometimes it's overwhelming and hard. And like, that's what I mean. Not everyone's cut out for every aspect there is in being a good massage therapist and a business owner and a scheduler. And, when you're on your own, there's a lot of stuff that has to be done. So I could see where sometimes that would be a factor.
The other thing I noticed a lot on those comments, and I've through interviews over the years, everyone's looking for the wage. How much are you going to pay me? Now, if I told you I was going to pay you $75 an hour, you'd be like, all right, cool. That sounds great. I want to work for $75 an hour. But then you came to work for the next week and I got you 3 massages. Right. But down the street, they offered you a job for $50 an hour and you're doing 20 massages a week. Who's making more money? So don't just take a job based upon who's going to give you the highest wage. And I think a lot of people go after or
the
don't
highest
work at certain places,
the highest percent amount. Right.
Yeah. And that's not the way. I mean, there's other perks involved with that wage that make value to it. And one of them, and the most important one, is can you put people on my table? Because you can give me free CEs. You can offer me 401ks. You can offer me benefits package and paid time off. But I don't need paid time off if I'm not working when I'm on, So you want to make sure that you can provide them with people on the table. Now, when I say to them, my job is to get people in the door. Your job is to get them out the door. They're like, well, don't you want us to keep them here? I was like, of course I want them to come back. I said, I don't want them to come back because they have to. I want them to come back because they need to. You want to help them feel better. You want to help them get past whatever their problem is. But if you can help them faster along by referring them to a PT or an acupuncturist or a chiropractor, and we can get some other people involved to help them get better, that's good for me too, because those people are going to come back because they know that they were cared for and looked after the right way when they first came in. And I just think that's all part of the process and explaining that to them.
Service marketing, service as our mission in this profession, and we want the benefit to land for the client.
And not everybody is a clinical therapist. Not everybody, wants to work on specific injuries. Not everybody wants to work on particular problems. Some people just want to give a kick-ass relaxation massage and make somebody feel better. And I think that's awesome. But if that's not what the practice typically promotes out there, that's probably not the place for you to be working. So don't expect to do relaxation massage when you're working at a chiropractor's office or you're working, for a place that's more orthopedic based. That's not what they're looking for. Go to a place where you can excel in what your sweet spot is. That's the other thing is a lot of people will just I'll take the first job that's offered to me. But if it's not going to make you happy, what's the point of taking the job?
Good advice. I want to go back to the money thing because that was the most frequently mentioned factor. And there seemed to be, I know it's really variable locally too, and probably you could do a formula based on cost of housing or something where I know like in some places in the country, the Bay Area, for example, or Seattle, where my son lives, people typically working people pay half their salary for their housing. And it's not the same everywhere. And the wage there also obviously needs to be different. But the happy ones, people who are happy working for an employer, all mentioned the pay. The ones that were complaining about it all mentioned the pay. Everyone's talking about the pay. And you're right. It's a complicated, it's not as simple as just how much you're getting per session. Yeah. Because there was a lot of stories of people feeling a bait and switch thing going on with employers. They said, oh, I'm going to make $80K a year. I'm going to make $80 a session, answering the ad and realizing it wasn't what the reality was. And it's hard for me, again, so it's hard for me to draw principles out of that, but here's the principle I'm stabbing at. $60, $70 per session seemed to be the breakwater between the people who were saying they were happy with what they were doing and the people who were not happy with it. Again, I know there's so many local factors there. What do you think of that?
So just to clarify, Till, you're saying that's $60 per session of take home for the therapist. Is that right?
That's the number that was quoted.
Okay.
And I did not
but
take
those
the time
numbers
to
are skewed
rectify it.
because you don't know if those are employment numbers or independent contractor numbers. So like,
Mm-hmm.
I think obviously Diane
Let's
will
put it
attest to
this way. Let's put it this way. As an employer, I would say if you were coming to me as a consultant, and I've done a bunch of this, by the way, for small clinics to help them with this very issue, I would say make sure your therapist can say to themselves they're making $60 to $70 per session, whatever that math of that is. That seems to be what I'm seeing is the feedback coming this way. The people that are happy are saying they're making $60, $70 or more per session. And again, there's a lot of variation there.
I would say the first thing is any therapist or anybody going to find a job needs to do is how much do you need to earn to make a living?
Yeah.
Because I've had therapists come and say they want to work, and then they come back 2 weeks later and say, I need to be making more money. And I said, well, what changed in the last 2 weeks? Well, I have these bills, and this is what I'm like, I don't understand. Like, if they want to work more, but they don't want to do more massages, they just want to make more money on the massages they're doing. And to me, that's not a conversation you have 2 weeks after you start a job, when you've agreed on all the other terms of the job. So that to me is a lack of professionalism in that regard.
I just want to point out to what Drew said earlier. I kind of agree with him in that the $60 or $70 it's very, we might hear that and that might be the check is written for that. But after all the numbers are done, meaning time spent to answer the phones, I'm talking for an independent contractor or a sole proprietor, all the things that they have to do, like what is being covered outside of that $60? Sheets, lotion. Like I do sheets, lotion, I do everything for staff. They don't pay for anything. And so after that $60 is taxed, and again, remember the sole proprietors are paying about 7.65% more. They're paying a self-employment tax.
Self-employment tax. Yeah.
So if you're 1099, you're paying a lot more in taxes. So that number gets beaten down pretty hard, pretty quick. And then too, if we come into another pandemic, you're not going to get unemployment. All my staff members sat back on their couch eating popcorn, and they had their unemployment during the pandemic. So for me, there's like this safety net. Also, what I'm also doing for you is you're getting money towards your Social Security. Another thing, like I hope when you're doing your stuff as a 1099 or an independent that you're doing your books correctly. Because, there is always the chance of an audit. So there's just so many factors that go into that $60. It's a lot of risk. And I think Drew and I are taking a lot of risk. And I think that we deserve to make a little money too. So 60, 70, I would need more facts to really have a fair discussion around what that means.
Yeah,
I'm going to
go ahead and take that number off the table. I was looking for indicators that we could talk about, but no, you're so right that there's so many factors in that those become red herrings almost, or things that we think mean something and they don't. Because the most interesting answers were the ones from, say, the clinic owners who said, listen, I sat down with my therapist. Each therapist has to decide what's right for them. But this is a story from a woman in Oregon who's been in a lot of our classes. She said, when we did the compensation math together with my therapist, they actually make more money per hour working at our spa and have more free time than they would if they're working for themselves. And I've actually been through two different consulting gigs where we did that with the therapist. We facilitated those conversations. And in each case, that was the takeaway that people had. It's like, wow, actually, you're paying me more than I realized, even though,
Yeah.
So
I'm
sympathetic to that point of view. I really am.
I remember when the pandemic kind of hit us, basically massage therapists who were either employees or contractors were scrambling to figure out how am I going to survive. And the ones that were employed by people like myself and Diane got to sit back and just understand, like, as long as they have an employer that's, out there working for them to take care of this, they're going to get their unemployment stuff. They're going to be taken care of. And I was hoping that when we came out of the pandemic, that some of those people that thought being a sole proprietor would be like the ideal way for them, they were going to realize, you know what, maybe it's safer to be employed by somebody because I have this kind of a protection with unemployment. And if a pandemic hits again, and I want to work for an employer that's going to take care of its employees like Boston Body Worker did, like Freedom Massage did, like these kind of places. I want to work for one of those places so I know that I can continue to build my career without that thought in the back of my head of catastrophizing what's going to happen next. And let the business owners focus on that stuff, you know? And it didn't work that way.
I just want to say too, I do think there are some people out there that it works perfect for, that make amazing proprietors. I mean, they're just built for it. They're made for it. They can juggle a lot of balls. They like the freedom of being their own boss. And kudos to you guys. Like, thank you so much for your service too. I'm not saying it's only my way, but there are a lot of people with families and other things going on that don't have the time to do all those things. And there is help. You can find good employers out there that are willing to accommodate your lifestyle. So that's, I think, something that I just wanted to point out too, that go on with your bad selves out there with your own businesses. So.
And
no, not to mention the risk. You said risk before too, and the risk of the, like, we have liability insurance, we have our own, insurance for the spaces that we're in. There's so much risk that an employer puts out there that I think when an employee comes in and says, "Oh, you guys charge $130 for an hour massage, I should get at least 65 because that's 50%, and that's where they're starting at." Like, I wish math worked that easy in my world, but I know post-pandemic, I'm paying back a quarter of a million dollars from a lease that I had to buy out of. So I have expenses that are on top of my already existing expenses that accumulate. That it's not as simple as just pay me what I'm worth.
There's a big discussion there around how do we each decide what the right number is from these different perspectives. And again, you can get a good view of them if you look through these threads. And there was quite a bit of sympathy for both sides of this quandary. People say, listen, I need to make so much, and I understand the employers have expenses too. There was a lot of that. But I got to say, from both sides too, employers chiming in too, there's a lot of one-sided, like, hey, I just need to make 80% of what the employer is taking in. If they're not paying me that, they're exploiting me. There was those kind of that's the more extreme position, say. But you can fill in the 80% with whatever you want. It's talking about it in the sense that it's true that you know what you need to make. Maybe we're not always aware of what the needs are on the other side of that picture too. And that's some of the challenge here as well.
This has been going on. Like, I've had a conversation going on 12 years ago now, 13 years ago with my staff. We all sat down and I literally opened up my books, my accounting books, to them because they thought that I was basically gouging them for what they were earning. And we sat down, we broke down what it costs my business to operate one massage. And it basically came down to, I was generating in net revenue $5 a service from all the work that was being done. And they thought that was unbelievable. And I'm like, that's where it is right now because of the overhead that I have. I said, I chose to lease this space at this price and pay this much per square foot. That's my deal. But this is what I can afford to pay based upon that. And it's not like I was undercutting them, underpaying them. They just didn't think that the 60% that might have been going to the business at that time was actually going to the business. Instead, I wasn't rolling around the cash on my bed at home. Like, no, like I'm telling you, like, I'm not even paying myself. This is what we're netting right now is $5 per massage. But again, unless they can see your book, sometimes it's just a conversation that's impossible to have, I think.
Well, I got to say every conversation I've been a part of where we're doing that, just kind of opening our concerns and our books to each other, there has been a more understanding, I'd say, of the cost involved in being an employer. Now, there's also, there's a societal conversation now, or what are the needs of workers? What do they need to feel valued, and what do they want? And I think you're both to the place, I'm going to predict this, where you're offering everything you know how to do and still not getting the response you need.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd like to think there's more that I can do. I just don't know what that is yet. But yeah, I think I'm trying to exhaust everything we can, short of, like, I know there's certain things that I could do with my staff that's here, or training them to work with them individually. But if I'm doing that, that means I'm taking myself away from my business in other areas where the business will be impacted to the point where it's not going to just impact that one therapist, but the other 6 or 7 therapists. So I have to just determine whether my time spent doing that one thing is valuable to all 7 or 8 of them versus just to the one of them. And when you don't do that, you look like, whoa, you don't care about me. I do care about you, but I also care about the whole family. And, I'm not playing favorites here.
Yeah, there's limitations to what Drew can do. What were you going to say, Diane?
I feel like for me, this has been a 20-year journey. And, there's been times where I've been a dreadful boss. Dreadful. I wouldn't have wanted to work for me 20 years ago, maybe. And I've learned a lot, and I've done the best that I can do as a person. I do think that as to what Drew was saying, there's only so much that I can do. And I do feel like I've done as much as possible. And I've lost my train of thought a little.
That happens.
Because this is a very passionate thing.
Yes, yeah.
I get really into it. But I feel like I said, I don't know. It's ever changing, and everything in our industry has been changing. I've
Whitney,
stepped up as much as I know how.
Yeah.
Right. Whitney, go ahead.
I had a question for both of you too, along these lines. And, a lot of our discussion has been around the conversations that you have with new potential employees, new people who might potentially be coming in there and their needs and wants. But we've been hearing a lot, not only within our profession, but across the board too, about this sort of increased level of disengagement with employees and employers across the board. And I'm wondering, have you seen any of these attitudinal shifts that you're talking about here impacting your existing staff that you have in any way, of feeling less comfortable, feeling less supported, or feeling like I don't want to work anymore? Those kinds of things that we hear about across the spectrum.
I think that's where I was going, and then I totally lost my train of thought because I got excited.
Well, I picked that up for you. Just throw it back at you.
Thank you. I appreciate you bringing me back. So when I was running the business initially, I was doing massage. I was doing everything. And I was managing people. And I very quickly got burnout. I do think that in order for the staff to get the most out of an employer and a manager and support, the business has to be constructed almost like every other business. So now I have a manager who takes care of the day-to-day. I have another therapist who takes care of my recruiting and my hiring. I have someone who takes care of all my finances. So I've had to learn how to delegate. And by delegating, then I am a little more available for my staff. My staff feels more loved than they've ever felt because I was a little burnt out. So I do think that it is important for staff to know that they're appreciated, they're doing a good job, that they're great with clients. We never stop loving up on our staff, and I think there's nothing that feels better than hearing from your role model, your employer, your manager, that you're doing a great job. I find in this business, you really can't take your employees for granted, because if they're not there massaging, you're kind of like, what are you going to do? I mean, if they're not, you're out of it too. So I do think that there is a little bit of a disconnect, and I see that, but I hope that it stops, and there are ways.
Yeah, I'm with you. After money, learning was the most mentioned motivator for the people that would work for an employer or that would make a difference for them or worth happy what they're doing. It was opportunities for learning. And sometimes it was like mentoring with a specific therapist who worked there. Sometimes it was like the CE benefit that people were getting, or the culture of learning they were finding in the clinic.
So I had different situations in place for therapists to either earn CEs or mentoring or do certain things. But what I found from them is that they would either say, that's not what I want to be learning. So can you teach me how to do X? In other words, this is what I want from you versus what I can offer to you. Or they would come back and say, I want to do a CE course that I want you to pay for that has nothing to do with service I would offer for you here. I'm like, well, that doesn't fit into what we're trying to provide here. So that wouldn't be included. And they would come back and say like, well, then I'm not getting what I want out of this. They're trying to basically use my space as a platform to build their solo practice. And I'm like, that's not what this is for. Any therapist that works for me that wants to go on and do their own thing, go right ahead. I have no problem with that whatsoever. But I don't expect to hire somebody who wants to come in for me to train them so they can go off and do whatever they want. You know what I mean? Like,
okay, Drew, can I push back a little bit?
Please. Yeah.
What if you're a businessman, let's take it from that point of view. Isn't there an argument to say like, this is just a negotiation? Mm-hmm. And if this is what you need and I can give it to you, then I get what I need. So from that point of view, with that therapist, isn't there an argument to say, yeah, you don't want to learn something that necessarily I see you practicing here, but if that keeps you here and keeps you happy, why not offer that for you?
Yeah, I think that would be a one-off, maybe, just in terms of, because there's what I'm referring to right now. My thought is this individual person or persons who had done several other things that warranted that response.
Okay, what about okay, all right. So you didn't feel very giving to this particular person, but what about that perspective? What about saying, okay, if they're willing to negotiate what they felt they needed? What about that perspective that just says, whatever it takes, I'm going to make you want to work here? And let's go to money. Let's say they say, I can afford to pay you 60, 70 bucks an hour. They say, I need 80. Yeah. Why not just add $10 onto your cost?
Because
so that you can pay the therapist that much.
Because if Diane hasn't done that already, I've done that, and I've already followed into that, and it doesn't work that way. But Diane's going to die if she doesn't get the start out, so let her have it.
Here's the thing, that is part of, I believe, my responsibility is to provide learning to the practitioners, because if they're not better than I was, then I know this is a big statement, but my manager is better than me. She's a better massage therapist and she's a better manager. How did that happen? I gave her everything I had and she went with it and she added to it what she adds to it. And she is better than me. Eugenia, I'm saying it out loud to the entire listener crowd. You are better than I am as a therapist and as a manager, right? In many ways. And that is the way I want it. And CEs, she teaches hands-on to staff. She'll pull aside a Sunday. She's taking classes with all kinds of people. James Matkowski, until soon to be you. Whitney, she's taking classes with you. She's everywhere, right? And she sets aside the time on Sundays. And whoever wants to show up can show up. Do they all show up? No, but that's not my problem. That's their problem, right? I'm giving it to them. Also, too, CEs, we have guest teachers come in. I have guest teachers come in and teach classes. Does everyone love the teachers? No. Does everyone come to the classes? No. Shame on them. It's all I can do is my best. I do think it's my responsibility as a business owner and as a boss to make sure that my therapists are better than me. And I get massages from them, and I'm a little intimidated to go back on the floor now. Because they're good.
I will say
they're really good.
Look,
I'm turning red because I think they can massage. Some of them can massage better than me, and that's the way I want it to be. So
when I hire my staff, the conversation I have with them is that my job as the business owner is to not be their boss. They are my boss in a sense. I work for my employees because they work for the Boston Body Worker. I have systems in place that they basically follow the systems of the Boston Body Worker. That's who they work for. I work for them to make sure that they have the most success within that system. And they see it as like, oh, you're my boss. I am not. As long as you follow the system and you understand the practice that we have in place there, that's who you work for. My job is to help you navigate that and be successful within that system. It's not a matter of like, if you don't follow that system, I'm going to be on the outside here saying, this is what you're doing wrong. This is what you're doing wrong. You're fired, or you're going to get a raise. No, I'm working within that system to kind of help them to see where they have their strengths and weaknesses. But some of them, they'll come through and they're like, well, I don't really want to, I had Boston Body Worker University where we'd be classrooms that we would talk about different techniques and different things. And some would be like, yeah, I'm really not into shoulder stuff. what does that even mean? So when somebody comes up and they have shoulder pain, we say, yeah, Diane's not available today because she's not into shoulder stuff. Of course not. So the attitude is like, I really want to learn on how to work on plantar fasciitis. I don't want to work on shoulder stuff. Like, it's baffling sometimes.
Well, back to my question for you, Drew.
I love it.
What if you come in as a businessman, say you want plantar fascia, and if that's what it takes to keep you here, why not?
Why not? Because then you're stuck every day catering to that one employee who you want to make feel special and happy because they're not getting what they wanted. And next thing you know, you have 7 other employees be like, we just did shoulder work 3 weeks ago. Why are we doing this again? Or we just did this, it's because this person needs some extra hand holding. So everybody else needs to fall into line with that. It's again, the system is what the system is. If they want to learn more, I'm happy to do private stuff with them, but
and then if you're getting the results that you want with the system as it is, fantastic. If you're getting what you need with the system as it is, you got the system that you need. If you're not getting the results you need as an employer with the system you got, then maybe the system is the question.
Well, the system's always changing. The system's always changing. The system's never 100%.
Right.
What
do you think, Diane?
I don't know. Just, like I said, I've been at this for a long time, and I haven't always done it elegantly and beautifully. And, but I will say this, that one thing for me about the art of massage is every practitioner is so different. Even practitioners that practice the same modality, even practitioners doing the same technique. I don't know if 2 people do the same technique, till you can teach the technique, but each person's kind of going to do it a little bit different. No one's going to do it exactly like you. So for me, I just have found that I want people to find their strengths and run with them. So there's been some times, where, like staff has wanted to try something. So we have added a branch on for oncology massage. Was that a part of my idea and my vision? No, but has it worked out magnificently? Fantastic at it. And has Molly now been with me for almost 10 years? Yes. So to me, I did say, Molly, if you want to check that out, and all it did was attract a different kind of clientele, but we're booked out. You can't get in with Molly doing oncology. So I did take some risk with accommodating staff. I couldn't do everything. There's certain things that I have a hard no to. I don't need to get into that, but all in all, I think that the beauty of community is everyone has something to offer. And I've just learned, I'm like a boss in the background. I've kind of decided, like, I'm not your friend. I'm your ally. So for me, it's a little, I make those decisions pretty crisp and clear. So for me, to a degree, till I would say, and Drew, everyone has their own different feelings on things. That a little flexibility with what people bring to my office, I think, has been helpful. I can't always give everybody exactly what they want, but I have benefited greatly by taking some of those risks.
Yeah, I will say this though as well. It does help as a business owner if you have other underlings who are doing some of the other parts of the system. So if you have somebody else helping with your staffing needs, if you have somebody else helping with your education stuff, and you can manage the business, sometimes those people that are having issues, they're never getting to you. They're getting to the underling saying, hey, I don't want to work on shoulder stuff this week. I want to work on, plantar pain or whatever it might be. And that the underling can absolutely work that time. But if I have to take away from my time that I'm constructing for the rest of the business for that one individual person every single time, then I'm always in the trenches there doing that stuff, and I'm never managing my business. And then the business eventually fails, and that one person who probably isn't even with us anymore is moving on, and the business is now underwater. So you have to kind of juggle what's not most, I don't want to say because they're less important, but prioritize how things are being done. And sometimes your priorities are going to be put above them, because if there's no business to manage, there's nothing for them anyway here.
I have so much sympathy for you as a manager, Drew. You manage a lot. Hey, there's one more question I got in mind, and Whitney, interrupt me or take it some other way if I'm going, if it's too much. But what about the money? Why don't you just add $10 and give the therapist $80 if they say that 70 is too little? Tell me about that.
Well, let me
Time for
ask
that,
a
Whit?
clarification before they answer that question. So
Yeah.
are you saying
Yeah.
do that for one person, or are you saying do that across the board for
No,
everybody?
that would be a fairness issue. You'd have to make some way that's fair, but that's often the argument that comes with this. I can't do it for X, 70, let's say, but I could do it for if it was Y, let's say it's 80. Why not just add that much more onto your prices and pay your therapist Y? In a fair way.
Because you just increased your payroll by 15%. So it's the answer is, I'm sorry, the answer is never that simple, because
Yeah.
I'm paying you $10 more, plus I'm paying payroll tax 11% more, and that number is not as simple as $10.
Yeah.
That's $10 multiplied by your 10 clients. That's $100, and 7 other therapists. That's $700 a week. That's $2,800 a month just to make that $10 happy. Math
Okay,
doesn't calculate.
Could you raise it $15
So-
then and pay 10 of it?
Hey, what?
Can you raise your rates to cover that cost too? That's the question. That's behind the question.
What if I raise my rates already? And the only way to do that, again, supply and demand, right? Like I have a therapist that is booked 6-7 months out, and I keep
Yeah.
wanting to raise his rates, but he insists that he wants to work for this wage and doesn't want to charge his clients more than that wage. And you know what I say? Good for you. I'm all for it. I
Well,
don't
the
need to make
second
more
part of
money off
that,
of those
right?
people.
Exactly. No, the
As long
second
as
part
he's
of that-
happy with what he's doing, I'm happy.
Mm-hmm.
The second part of that question that I'm trying to get your views on, what about just charging more?
Sometimes you have to. Like I
Yeah.
raised my rates in September by 15%. That's a significant pay hike, but I hadn't raised my rates in 5 years. When I reached out to all my members about the rate change, I had
Yeah.
2 out of 200 that had an issue with it, and it really was a non-issue. So I think because the alternative was this, they go find another therapist somewhere else, and they don't want to do that. And they know the therapist is not, it's not like the company raised the rates and the therapist is all getting paid the same kind of thing. Like there's things change in the business model that it works. And, you have a reputation.
Yeah.
We've been around for 20 plus years. They trust that. And that works for us, but we did raise the rates and change things. And it's still never going to be enough for that one person.
I would like to. So this is interesting, Drew. I adore you, and I'm learning more about your business. And we do have some similarities, and we also have some differences. Because for me, I would never want to lose someone for $10 an hour. I know I might be losing my mind by saying this on a podcast, but most of my staff is happy with what they're making, and I always say, if you're not, at least give me the opportunity.
Yeah.
If you're going to go somewhere else to have a conversation,
Absolutely, 100%.
And is it fair to everyone? No. Does everyone in my office get paid the same amount? No. So
No.
I don't know. So I don't.
But think about this though. I'm not having that conversation.
Wait. At this point in time, the ball has been tossed from my hand to the employee's hands a little bit, right? So in this day and age, I've learned that I have to be a little more flexible, and my pay scale has increased a lot over the last few years, and as has adding the PTO, as has now adding 401k. I did benefit in some ways for a while there, and now those other businesses are upping the game as to what a good employer is. So, it's tapping in, and I had to hire a manager, and my God, there's another thing. So I've had to spend money to keep people happy, to keep staff happy, and then also to keep myself happy, where I don't have all the responsibilities in the office, so that I can manage things better. But that's where I am. So I might not go 10, I might go 5. Here's
the thing. I'll go 20. How's that? I'll go $20 an hour more. I'll give them $20 more. The question that you asked, Till, was why not just give them $10 more, right?
Why not raise your rates to give them $10 more?
Regardless, either way, it doesn't matter. And
Okay.
I think the answer is the infamous Whitney answer, which it depends. It really has to depend, because if you're saying universally across the board, I would say, no, I wouldn't do that. Okay. But if you're saying if a therapist has been with you for a year now, and they're saying they need to earn more an hour, and they're going to leave if they don't pay them $10 more an hour, that's a different conversation altogether, because I can look back at their numbers and see what they've earned And
I
we
agree
can,
with that.
and we can then have that conversation. But if you're saying, I'm sitting down to interview for a job and I'm saying I'm going to pay you 75 and you say, no, I want 85. No, I'm not having that conversation just yet. If you can show me something based on incentives, I'll have that conversation. But if you're just saying you're worth more because you say so, I'm telling you, 23 years tells me exactly what you're worth, because I don't just arbitrarily pull numbers out and say this is what I'm going to pay you. I pay people based upon what the business can afford and what their value is, and then I go from there. So it's not as simple as just give them $10 more so you don't lose them.
Mhm.
Yeah. Thank you, Drew.
Good points, Drew. Good points.
Yeah, no, thank you both. What do you think, Whitney? How are we doing?
I think it's never an easy answer, obviously. And, for me, I was particularly interested in this just because I see this is not an isolated thing. I mean, I think we're seeing a lot of these kinds of things impacting various aspects of our industry across the board. And it certainly was, it's an angle that we haven't explored a lot. So I really appreciate both of you coming on and giving a lot of value and perspective to those parts of the puzzle as well.
I would just like to say that if people are out there looking for work, okay, and I like to believe there's a lot of massage therapists out there looking for work right now. Pick up the phone or find the contact on their website and email the places you want to work. Start the conversation. Advocate for yourself. I guarantee you, the place you want to work wants to hear from you. They do want to hear from you, and they'll have the conversation. If the conversation works out that you don't want to work there, so be it. But at least you checked it off the box, and you don't sit there being like, well, I'm not going to call them because they'd never hire me, or I'm not good enough to work there, or I'm too good to work there. Like, pick up the phone. Otherwise, you're still not making anything because you're not working. Mm-hmm. So just have the conversation.
I would like to say thank you to all the massage therapists on the ground, working day in and day out with clients. I've done it, and I know it's not always easy. And, a lot of times I would hope there would be a band in the lobby waiting for me, playing music, saying how great a job I did. And oftentimes that didn't happen. Oftentimes I didn't even know what the client thought, so thank you for all your hard work. And this is a tricky conversation. And I would just like to say again, I am hiring, and I am in the Missouri area. It's freedommassage.com.
All right.
Nice. Thank you both. No, so much.
And my information is right there. Just go to bostonbodyworker.com.
bostonbodyworker.com. We're going to put both you guys in the show notes directly to your sites. And yeah, please do call these two amazing leaders in our field, these two therapists. We're lucky to have you two, and we're lucky to have all the people on the ground, like you say, and then everyone everywhere else working hard to try to find the balance between these different competing questions.
We love what we do. We're passionate about what we do. And
if
COVID didn't kick that passion out of me, I don't know what the hell ever could, because COVID kicked my ass, and I'm still hot and heavy for massage therapy, and I got another 10, 15 years left in me, I think. So
you know what, Drew, I would like to do too, if you would join me in just thanking Whitney and Till for what they're doing with this podcast. I mean, you guys are just kicking ass and taking names. I mean, you get so many views, and you have so many interesting topics and guests, and you're not afraid to push push a little bit. So thank you for being brave and speaking your minds and bringing on great guests.
I'll actually take that another.
I'm honored to be here.
I want to take that thank you to another level, because I put this question on Facebook. I put this question on Facebook at the beginning of the week, and I would say minutes later, maybe it was an hour or two later, Till chimed in, picked up the phone, we had a conversation, and we started talking about just this, because he gets it. He's met me enough times. We know enough about each other to know we both love this field, and we genuinely are concerned for both sides of it, employers and employees. And we want to figure out what the answers are. I mean, we don't know what the answers are. I certainly don't think I have all the answers. Diane doesn't, Whitney doesn't. And I don't think anybody on Facebook has them either. But we have to have the conversation. Mm-hmm. We have to have sometimes conversations that are hard and difficult and make us uncomfortable. But that's where the answers are usually found, right? So continue. Yeah, thank you guys so much for this platform. Thank you guys so much for what you've been doing for the last 25, 30 years. Because we've known each other that long in regard. And and to those out there listening to this podcast, trust me, there's a lot more people like Till and Whitney and Diane that are out there that are just as passionate as you are. Pick up the phone, shoot them an email. They're there to help guys.
Freedommassage.com.
Thank you,
Yeah. Right.
Drew. All right. Thank you, Drew. That's feeling the love. The Thinking Practitioner podcast is supported by ABMP, Associated Bodywork and Massage Professionals. ABMP membership gives professional practitioners like you a package including individual liability insurance, free continuing education, and quick reference apps, online scheduling and payments with Pocket Suite, and much more.
And ABMP's CE courses, podcast, and the Massage and Bodywork magazine always feature expert voices and new perspectives in the profession, like my partner Till here and myself. Thinking Practitioner listeners can save on joining ABMP at abmp.com/thinking. So we would like to say thank you to all of our listeners who's hung out with us here on this episode. Thanks again to all of our sponsors. You can stop by our sites for video, show notes, transcripts, and any extras. You can find that links over on my site at academyofclinicalmassage.com. And Till, where can they find that with you?
I am at advancedtrainings.com.
All right. So questions or things you'd like to ask us, you can hear us talk about, email us at info@thethinkingpractitioner.com, or you can look for us on social media under our names. My name is currently Whitney Lowe on social media. Until yours.
Still Till Luca.
Right.
Rate us. Please rate us on Apple Podcasts. That really does help people find the show, and it helps us stay visible so that people will listen. And you can also hear us on Spotify, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, or wherever else you listen. Please do share the word. Tell a friend. It's just great to have you in the audience, and take care. Thanks,
See
Whitney.
you again next
Thanks,
time.
everybody.
All righty.